United States has declared it will begin blocking all ships entering or leaving Iranian ports starting Monday. This comes after peace talks in Pakistan ended without an agreement. Iran's parliament speaker, who led ceasefire negotiations in Pakistan, said the U.S. delegation ultimately failed to gain the trust of the Iranian delegation, and said his country would not bow to any threats. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has been ousted, with the opposition securing a landslide election win, ending his 16 years in power that included repeated clashes with the European Union, while maintaining closer ties with Russia. Attention is now turning to how election winner Peter Magyar will reshape ties with the EU and Western allies.
Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. Washington has declared it will begin blocking all ships entering and leaving Iranian ports from Monday morning, U.S. time. It seems the American president was also considering full-fledged bombing after the first round of talks failed in Pakistan. Our Oh Soo-young has the latest.
U.S. forces will begin blockading maritime traffic in and out of Iranian ports from Monday after negotiations between Washington and Tehran broke down in Islamabad. In a post on X on Sunday, the U.S. Central Command announced that measure, saying that the blockade will be enforced impartially against vessels of all nations entering or departing Iranian ports and coastal areas, including all Iranian ports on the Arabian Gulf and Gulf of Oman. CENTCOM, however, clarified its forces would not impede freedom of navigation for vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz to and from non-Iranian ports. The maritime measure follows the failed 21-hour talks in Pakistan between U.S. and Iranian delegations. U.S. President Donald Trump said Iran refused to give up on its nuclear weapons ambition and declared the U.S. would soon begin the blockade. He added he had instructed the Navy to intercept vessels paying passage fees to Iran and that the U.S. would soon begin destroying mines laid by Iran along the strait. Experts say the failure of the first round was perhaps expected, but should not lead to escalation.
Neither side may have wanted to give the impression that they came to an agreement too quickly. They could be opening themselves up for criticism at home that they may have given in too much or too easily. So in and of itself, that is not necessarily the problem. But if on substance they remain this far away from each other and there is escalation simultaneously, that certainly doesn't bode well.
Trump told Fox News Sunday Morning Features that Iran hasn't left the bargaining table and he predicts Tehran will come back to give the U.S. everything it wants. The Wall Street Journal reported the same day that Trump and his advisors are considering limited military strikes in Iran, in addition to the U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, as a way to break a stalemate in peace talks. Although the White House declined to discuss specific options, officials told the Journal that hours after the Islamabad talks collapsed, the president considered resuming a full-fledged bombing campaign, though less likely, or a more temporary blockade. He also reportedly remains open to a diplomatic solution. In the meantime, Oman has called for an extension to the 2-week ceasefire set last Tuesday to allow more time for the US and Iran to continue dialogue. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Iran's parliament speaker, who led peace talks with the United States in Pakistan, said Sunday that his country would not give in to threats after U.S. President Donald Trump ordered a naval blockade of the strategic Strait of Hormuz. Our Cho Young-eun reports.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Washington and Tehran were just inches away from reaching a deal during the peace talks. Writing on social media following the collapse of negotiations in Islamabad, Araghchi said Iran engaged with the U.S. in good faith to end the war during intensive talks at the highest level in 47 years. He added that Tehran had been met with maximalism and shifting goalposts, and that a sudden shift in the U.S. position ultimately derailed the negotiations and prevented a memorandum of understanding between the two sides. Iran's parliamentary speaker and chief negotiator Bagar Ghalibaf told state media that the U.S. delegation at Saturday's marathon talks in Islamabad ultimately failed to gain the trust of the Iranian delegation in this round of negotiations, adding that Iran would not bow to any threats. Ghalibaf also said Iran had put forward constructive proposals that moved discussions forward despite deep mistrust between the two sides and dismissed threats from U.S. President Donald Trump. Earlier, Trump ordered a U.S. naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz in response to what he described as Iran's unyielding refusal to give up its nuclear ambitions. Iran's Revolutionary Guard warned that military vessels approaching the Strait of Hormuz would be considered a violation of ceasefire, while the country's deputy parliament speaker said the strait is completely under Iran's control. The Iranian parliament also emphasized that the strategic route is non-negotiable under any circumstances. 조영은, Arirang News.
South Korea will continue to maintain its emergency economic response system following the collapse in talks between the United States and Iran. Now that's according to Blue House spokesperson Chun Eun-soo on Sunday after an emergency economic meeting. The meeting was presided over by Presidential Chief of Staff for Policy Kim Yong-bum, where officials assessed that great uncertainty lingers surrounding the local economy. They expect it to take significant time for Middle East countries to restore logistics and energy facilities even after the conflict ends. The authorities will maintain emergency meetings at a top and senior level and check affected items on a daily basis. And President Lee Jae-myung is holding a summit with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk at the Blue House. Lee welcomed Tusk to his office this morning. Tusk signed the guest book and the pair held a photo session. Their talks are expected to focus on strengthening South Korea and Poland's strategic partnership in areas including defense and high-tech industries. The two leaders are also set to discuss global issues, including the situation in the Middle East. A joint press statement and an official lunch are scheduled for the afternoon. Prime Minister Tusk began a two-day official visit to South Korea on Sunday at President Lee's invitation. Hungary's opposition Tisza party has won a decisive election victory, ending Prime Minister Viktor Orbán's 16-year rule. The result signals a major political shift, with Peter Magyar poised to reshape the ties with the European Union and Western allies. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Hungary is set for a major political shift as the opposition Tisza party has won the general election, ending Prime Minister Viktor Orbán's 16-year hold on power. The party is led by Peter Magyar, a former Orbán ally who broke away from the ruling Fidesz party in 2024. Orbán conceded defeat less than 3 hours after polls closed on Sunday, calling the result painful in a race marked by intense campaigning and unusually high voter engagement.
Dear friends, the election result is not final yet, but it is understandable and clear. The election result is painful for us, but clear. The responsibility and possibility of governing was not given to us. I've congratulated the winner. I thank you for all the great work.
Turnout reached a record 77.8%, significantly higher than in previous elections, signaling strong public demand for change. Projections show the Tisza party securing roughly 138 seats in Hungary's 199-seat parliament, giving it a commanding majority and a clear mandate to govern. The outcome could mark the end of Orbán's long-standing push to reshape Hungary into what he called an illiberal democracy, a model that often put Budapest at odds with its Western allies. Over the years, his government has clashed repeatedly with the European Union over rule of law issues, while maintaining closer ties with Moscow. European leaders are watching closely for a potential reset in relations with Brussels, while the shift could also influence support for Ukraine, an issue where Orbán had frequently broken ranks with EU partners. With Peter Magyar now posed to take power, attention turns to how quickly his government will move to realign Hungary's foreign policy and restore ties with key allies in Europe and the United States. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
BTS has made U.S. music chart history as their fifth studio album, Arirang, sits on top of the Billboard 200 for a third consecutive week. According to Billboard on Sunday, the album held off strong competition from Morgan Wallen's I'm the Problem and Ye's Bully. This marks the first time any K-pop act has spent 3 weeks at #1. The previous best was 2 non-consecutive weeks achieved by the soundtrack to K-pop Demon Hunters. The Billboard 200 ranks albums based on overall consumption, including physical sales and streaming. With this milestone, BTS also becomes the first group in 13 years to spend 3 weeks at #1. South Korea has resumed the tourist train service to Dorasan Station, the closest railway station to North Korea, after more than 6 years, raising hopes for renewed inter-Korean connectivity and exchanges. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
South Korea on Friday resumed its tourist rail service to and from Dorasan Station, close to the DMZ, after a suspension of around 6.5 years. A symbol of inter-Korean cooperation, the station was established at a summit in 2000, following an agreement to connect railways. Freight trains once passed through Dorasan, transporting goods to and from the Kaesong Industrial Complex until operations halted in 2016 amid rising tensions. After serving as a tourist destination, it closed in late 2019 due to COVID-19, until this Friday marked a full resumption of regular tourist rail service. The unification minister and passengers alike agree that this resumption can be the first step toward peace.
The Korean peninsula is the only place where a border is sealed with barbed wire. This railway, built under the Kim Dae-jung administration, once carried materials to Kaesong. Today is about dreaming of that era again.
My son's dream is to travel to Europe by train. Unification may be a distant goal for now, but I hope we can reconnect, travel back and forth freely, communicate, and resume exchanges.
The train travels along the route connecting Seoul Station, Unjeong, Imjingang, and Dorasan Station, allowing passengers to travel beyond the civilian control zone. At Dorasan Station, the minister once again underlined the importance of dialogue and cooperation between the two Koreas for the future.
Hostility between the two Koreas serves no purpose. Peace, coexistence, reconciliation, and cooperation are the only paths to shared prosperity. We will lead the way by recognizing and respecting the North first, and by putting peace into action, not just words.
Through May, the service will run once daily on the 2nd and 4th Fridays, with a maximum of 120 passengers on board per trip. Starting in June, it will operate 4 times a month, running every Friday. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Facing the tough reality of higher flight fares and fewer flight options, more Korean travelers are turning to domestic destinations, especially with a program that covers up to half of their travel expenses. Our culture correspondent Park Geon-woo tells us more.
One of the latest travel trends in Korea is visiting lesser-known rural towns through so-called half-cost trips. Under the policy, solo travelers can get half of their total spending, up to around $70 reimbursed, while groups of 2 or more can receive up to around $135. That's provided as a mobile gift certificate that can be used locally or in the region's online shopping mall after verifying their actual visit with photos and receipts of what they spent. What started as a local initiative in Gangjin-gun County 2 years ago has now expanded into a government-backed program spanning 16 cities and counties starting this April. Those areas include Pyeongchang-gun County, Jecheon City, Namhae-gun County, and Wando-gun County, among others selected from 84 applicants. In Jecheon, all 10,000 travel vouchers were sold out within the first hour.
We used to worry about attracting repeat visitors, but through this program, we expect more people to return to the region. With financial support, visitors are also likely to spend more and stay longer.
The program is also receiving positive reactions beyond those who signed up.
A lot of people want to travel these days, and with high fuel surcharges making overseas trips more expensive, programs like this are especially attractive.
But some say better promotion could encourage even more people to explore smaller cities.
I like traveling to smaller towns, but I wish it were easier to find detailed information. If there were more things to see and do, I'd be more likely to visit.
One expert says creating original content will be crucial for local regions to attract more visitors and fully benefit from the program.
To encourage longer stays and repeat visits, regions need stronger content and storytelling. Otherwise, the financial support may only result in one-time visits. That's why local governments should support private firms to develop innovative programs and attract more investment, particularly in accommodation.
He added that actively attracting talent from outside the region will be key, rather than relying solely on local efforts to build a more sustainable tourism system. And with 4 more areas set to be selected through an open call later this year, more local regions are expected to see a boost in vitality. Park Gonu, Arirang News.
This is the world now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday made an appearance in southern Lebanon, standing among Israeli troops inside what his military calls a security zone on Lebanese soil. Speaking on video surrounded by soldiers in balaclavas, Netanyahu said the war is not over and his forces have more to accomplish and are actively doing it. The Trump administration has pressed Netanyahu to scale back its attacks and open negotiations, warning the strikes are threatening the fragile U.S. Iran ceasefire. Despite that pressure, Israeli strikes continued on Sunday, killing at least 35 more people, according to Lebanese authorities. Nigerian military jets on Saturday night struck a market in the country's northeast, killing more than 200 people. The strike hit Jili Market in Yobe State near the border with Borno, a region long at the center of a Boko Haram insurgency that has killed thousands and displaced millions. The Nigerian Air Force said it had been targeting Boko Haram militants in the area and has since activated a formal investigation into the civilian casualties. A local councillor told reporters that over 200 people lost their lives and many others are injured. In Haiti, at least 30 people have died in a stampede at the La Ferrière Citadel. The stampede on Saturday during an annual celebration at the 19th century UNESCO World Heritage Fortress was made worse by heavy rains. Haiti's Civil Protection Authority warned the death toll could rise, noting that students and young people were among the large crowd gathered for the event when the disaster struck. The crew of NASA's Artemis II capsule was reunited with their families in Houston, Texas on Saturday after splashdown off the coast of Southern California the day before. The 4 astronauts had spent nearly 10 days in space following the first manned trip to the vicinity of the moon in over half a century. The capsule sped through Earth's atmosphere at 32 times the speed of sound before parachuting into calm seas at 5:07 p.m. Pacific time in what was described as a bullseye landing. The mission also broke the human spaceflight distance record set by Apollo 13 in 1970, traveling 406,000 kilometers from Earth. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
This week starts off feeling a lot like early summer, and today could be one of the warmest days so far this year. But mornings and evenings are nicely breezy with large daily temperature swings of around 15 degrees Celsius or even more in many places. So you'll still need that jacket early and late in the day. And this warm pattern will continue for now with daytime highs staying around 25 degrees Celsius here in the capital, about 7 degrees higher than average, feeling more like late May or early June. And this afternoon, Seoul and Gwangju will be getting up to 25 degrees, Daejeon topping out at 26 degrees under mostly sunny skies with clean air quality nationwide. Looking ahead, rain will return to the southern coast and Jeju tomorrow, lasting into the following day for Jeju. Then another band of rain is expected in Jeju and the southern regions on Friday.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.